So now we're on to my favorite part of the annual meeting, which is the opportunity to take questions from you, our members. I'm here today with Dave Munk, who's the chairman of our board of directors. Hi, Dave. How you doing?
Doing great.
We've got a lot of good questions from our members, but the first one I want to start with, obviously COVID-19 has had a big impact on our community, on our members individually, but also on Holycross. I'm wondering if you can tell us more about what Holycross is doing for our members during this difficult time.
Absolutely, Brian. Well, certainly COVID-19 dominates everyone's point of view and the news day to day. When this first broke out and really emerged as a threat in March, our staff was quick to jump to action. And our first priority was really to ensure the reliable and safe operations to maintain electric service during these times of crisis. And I want to commend your staff for really jumping to the forefront of initiating work from home, closing our offices, and being ahead of the pack to maintain the health and availability of our staff to respond promptly to any sort of emergency that might arise.
Let's talk about financial impacts as well. Obviously, members have lost jobs, or they've had their hours reduced, or they've closed their businesses. What is Holycross doing for our members who've been affected in that way?
Once we ensured that operations were steady and solid, I was just thrilled, as was the whole board of directors, to hear from staff with a proposal to take a portion of our unclaimed capital credits and devote $500,000 of those resources to be made available to members who are experiencing challenges in paying their bills.
So if you're struggling with your electricity bills, having a hard time paying them, and you've been impacted by COVID-19, please give us a call, because we can't help you if we don't know that you're in need, whether it's a deferred payment plan, whether it's part of our bill credits and our member payment assistance. We have a number of ways to help you out, so do give us a call.
One of the next questions that's on members' minds has to do with this summer's fire season and what extra precautions Holycross is taking across the area.
One of the biggest challenges that I've faced during my time here at Holycross is learning the lessons from the summer of 2018 and the Lake Christine fire. We live in a mountainous region. We live in an area with dry fuels. It's very important that we take every precaution that we can when we're working in the field to minimize the risk of fires starting from our system or from our activities. But as you mentioned, we have dry thunderstorms, we have other factors that create fires, and so how do we build a more resilient electric distribution system that can stay operable even when there is a fire in our area? So we have looked at both the high-risk areas of our service territory, but also now the medium-risk areas of our service territory. And we've gone through and put protective wraps around our poles for our delivery system. We've changed out fuses to reduce the risk of hot gases when those fuses blow. We've gone through with drones and infrared cameras and engaged in inspections to tighten things down and take care of loose fittings and other things where sparks can start on our system. And we're mitigating our operation practices. We've got fire extinguishers on all of our trucks now. Our crews are trained in firefighting so that we can put them out before they get bigger. So we're doing a lot of things to minimize the risk of fire, the same way that we've always minimized the risk from snowstorms or even viruses like COVID-19.
Right. And thank you, Brian. And what I'd like to add to that is staff came to the board 2 years ago following Lake Christine with a specific plan on how to accelerate and expand our fire preparedness as a system. And so we appreciated their leadership. That leadership is being shared with other co-ops in Colorado and beyond as the threat of wildfire increases across the West as a whole.
And you know, I talked about a lot of operational changes that we've made, but also from a strategy standpoint, rethinking how we operate our electric system and our grid in the future to incorporate new technologies, distributed energy resources, microgrids, and other conversations that were brought out through our recent dialogue in the Upper Roaring Fork Valley with the Rocky Mountain Institute. That report just came out within the last month. There are a lot of great activities underway as a result of that to build a more resilient system that we're going to need, whether it's wildfires or snowstorms or other things. We got to figure out a way to keep the lights on And if our grid doesn't work, we need a plan B to keep you safe and comfortable in your homes and in your workplaces. So this next question touches on one of my favorite topics, and Dave's too, and that's clean energy. We announced in the fall of 2018 our 70-70-30 plan, and as has been reported, we've been making some great progress as of late with some of our new clean energy projects. The question now is, what's the board's vision for after 70-70-30? Where do we go in the long term?
Right.
What's our thinking on that?
Thanks, Bryan. That is a key question, you know. We get asked that by members. It's something that's on the mind of local governments, individuals, and businesses throughout our region and beyond. Getting to 70-70-30 is the first step, but the big question is, how do we get to 100? With 70-70-30, we've actually seen the promise of lower cost electricity from renewables come to pass. It becomes a little more difficult as we go to 100, but that is our new goal, and we are going to get there. Some of the answers don't appear today. We're looking forward to working with staff to find out how we can do that, and do that in a responsible way that maintains the affordability factor that Holycross members, you all, have come to expect and should expect going forward into the years and decades to come. But we're going to get there, and you can feel confident that we've got the best and the brightest to bring us any sort of technological edge that's available out there in the market.
Yeah, it's certainly an exciting time, and we will continue to have the challenge to not only provide reliable and affordable service, but do so safely. We've now added sort of this fourth leg of the stool, which is how do we provide that service in a more sustainable way. So it's going to be fun, it's going to be exciting, it's going to involve all of you as our members, and I think you can look forward to some new announcements very soon.
Right up there with our power supply and clean energy mix is concern about rates. Energy affordability has always been a priority for our board and our organization. So the question that always is on members' minds is, what about the next rate increase? How soon? How big? What are the factors that determine that?
Well, thanks to the 70-70-30 program, as you mentioned earlier, Dave, we've been able to realize some significant cost savings, over $1 million last year alone in reduced power supply costs as a result of the actions that we're taking to also clean up our power supply. That's about half of what you pay every month in your bill as a member. And so if we can keep those costs flat or declining, that puts a tremendous downward pressure on our overall cost increases that we see from labor and materials every year at about the cost of inflation. So it's actually my hope that we'll go for some time without a rate increase. Of course, that has everything to do with the economy, that has everything to do with other factors like healthcare for our employees or the cost of materials. But it's my hope that we can preserve the affordability of our electric supply even as we increase its sustainability going forward. You know, one of the other ways that we can help members with their bill costs is through investments in energy efficiency and through giving tools through our marketplace to help you manage when and how you consume energy with different rate structures that involve either time of use or responding to a peak time rebate program, which we introduced this year. So there are a lot of new and different options beyond the rate that can help people manage the bill, because the bill is ultimately what you have to pay every month. And I know you'd like to keep it as low as possible.
It's an interesting job as a board member to balance the improvements and enhancements that are emerging and that Bryan's referring to in terms of the capacity to monitor and manage your own consumption and therefore the size of your individual bill, but also some of the other improvements that are needed for the system as a whole. You know, capitalizing on the smart meters that have been deployed. What are the costs and investments that are needed to accommodate more distributed renewable energy, whether it's rooftop PV or community gardens, things like that. And then the resilience projects that we talked about just a moment ago as well, that are really important for the future of how electricity is delivered to people and the type of energy services that members like you receive. So it's a real trick and it's a balancing act. And we rely on input from staff who's out there not only in the field and working with you and understanding your needs and wants, but also keeping an eye on industry developments. And then we bring those all together and look at the costs of these when we make our decisions about how to make investments and versus how to keep costs in line and under control.
Look, I think one of the things that I know the board is proud of, I think the members should be proud of, is that we have the lowest residential electric rates amongst all of the Colorado-based cooperatives in the state, all 22 of them. And that's a point of pride, and I think that's something that we don't want to sacrifice. In addition, our commercial and industrial rates are within the top 3. So affordability is something that we take great pride in, and to the extent that we can add to that through these innovative programs, and we can run a very efficient operation that yields back to you, our members, capital credits every year, bill payment credits that help you with those bills, I think that's a great place to be. We can be economically sustainable as well as environmentally sustainable. So another question that's come in now, and this is also a little bit COVID related, since working from home, distance learning, all of those things have put an emphasis on broadband. Any plans for Holycross to bring broadband to our area?
Well, thanks, Bryan. You know, we certainly do field a lot of questions about that from members, and we know that there's a lot of interest. And as you point out, that interest is only heightened because the importance of reliable, high-speed internet service is just critical right now, whether it's education, health, or commerce. The first step we're doing is improving the broadband connectivity between our key assets, our substations and other operational assets that are essential to actually capitalize on the flow of data from the individual meters at the household level, as well as monitoring outside conditions. So we're upgrading that capacity that is honestly internal and that improves the level of service that we provide to our members. However, once that capacity is in place, what can we do with that? We're bringing that type of broadband access closer to our individual members. So at a board level, we really spent time considering what our options were in terms of that last mile, the retail service. So you as an individual member, whether it's your child studying for school, whether it's you trying to operate a home business or stay connected to the world even though you're at the outer reaches of our service territory. And so what we came up with in that assessment was to work with local governments, individual broadband providers, and retailers to try and partner with them and facilitate access to this improved quality of broadband. Now, I know that your VP Bob Farmer, who we heard from earlier, has been at the center of this. Do you want to add anything in terms of the research and preparation that was provided?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. So Bob Farmer leads our IT work. He's also got a long history in broadband, and as someone that has been involved in the smart grid myself, I can tell you that what we're doing is becoming an increasingly digital enterprise, and that the reliability of our system is going to depend as much on the reliability of the physical asset as it is the reliability of our capability to communicate with it. And so investing in this, what we call the middle mile network along our system, think of it as our kind of backbone in our valleys that we serve, will be great for us in terms of giving us more visibility into when and how the grid is operating and how we need to operate it better. But also it provides that connection to our local partners who are going to be either local governments or private firms that are going to use that to provide access directly to you in your homes. For example, we're already partnering with Comcast in the cities and towns of Gypsum and Eagle to provide broadband service there. It's a project that's underway using Holycross facilities as a stepping off point. We're partnering with the Northwest Council of Governments in something called Project Thor, which brings super high speed, think the interstate highway, through our area that we can then connect our state highways of the Holycross system to them, and then the providers can bring the local highways directly to your door. So it's a comprehensive plan. It's something that's really exciting that'll be to the benefit of both Holycross and to you, our members, and we look forward to sharing more with you as it unfolds in the next few years.
The lines are blurring between the traditional role of an electric utility is to sell kilowatt hours and make sure they were there when you want them and at an affordable price. But now, as you can hear, with the needs of the community emerging, those things vary. Those types of issues that members are concerned with are changing. They're expanding, and the lines are blurring between, well, this is what an electric utility should do. Here's what a state government could do. Here's what a public entity or a private business should provide. And so Holycross is really stepping into that and working with stakeholders, community governments, individual members and businesses to provide services and provide access to capital, to provide access to the legislature, to serve in roles that we really never have in the past. And I think the broadband question is an excellent example of that, where we looked at how far should Holycross step into this? What sort of financial risk should we be comfortable with? What sort of benefits would our members gain? And could they benefit from us doing that? Or could we just act as a facilitator and connect other entities that can provide the resources needed to improve the quality of life for our members and our communities? Well, Bryan, speaking of the impact of COVID, not only on operations, but also on our communities and our individual members, let's talk for a minute about the questions that we are starting to hear and are certainly on the minds of members throughout our territory, which is, what is the impact of COVID on the financial health of Holycross, both right now and what's the outlook for the balance of the year and beyond?
That's a great question, Dave. The good news is we're in an excellent financial position here at Holycross. In mid-March, we saw what was coming on the horizon with respect to COVID and the possibility of a premature end to the ski season, which made me sad, and I'm sure it made a lot of you out there sad. But it did have a significant impact on Holycross in two ways. One, through the reduction in total kilowatt hour sales, which is where we get most of our revenue. We saw about a 10 to 15% reduction in kilowatt hour sales during March and into mid-April. That's attenuated somewhat now. We're seeing it closer to 3 to 5% in a reduction of sales. And that's a level that we can absorb within the confines of our budget. We had a really good year last year in 2019. We carried some of those revenues forward to help hedge against the possibility of a recession. We're glad we did, because now that's what's sustaining us in some ways during the COVID recession that's facing us here. So I feel pretty confident that we'll continue to do well here in 2020. I think we're concerned that if we do have a second wave, a resurgence coming up in the winter, that could be more severe. But right now, if people wear their masks and they wash their hands and they keep that social distance, I think we'll be able to avoid that and kind of get back to a new normal, whatever that is.
Well, a new normal is really something that's impossible to predict right now. But one of the things that we do know that's a real risk is what happens if the summer or the following winter are still in a depressed state in terms of the economic activity. How has staff anticipated through budgeting and other financial outlooks what that would do to our rates, our costs, and other elements that affect our financial health?
Yeah, and obviously long-term planning is a key element for both the board and the staff, and so it's something that we engage in pretty regularly, including every August in our strategic planning retreat, which this year I think will be focused on what's the long-term financial forecast, what do we know about the pandemic and its impact on our economy and the recovery or lack thereof. I think that's something that we'll look at. We're looking at right now developing several scenarios, including one which I don't want to consider, but it's something we have to, which is a year without a winter. What happens if we don't have the resort community activity, the skiing, the restaurants, the hotel stays? What does that mean for us as a utility? And then what steps do we need to take to minimize our costs? The good news is that for every dollar that we sell in kilowatt hours, about 60 cents of that is a cost we don't have to pay to buy that power from a power plant or from the market or from another provider. So there's a buffer somewhat. if we see a reduction in sales. But that still leaves us with that 40% of our people and our materials and our facilities that we have to manage. And we're taking some responsible steps now to trim the sales, to bring back some of those discretionary expenditures, and to consider options that we might need to implement if things get more severe. Let's hope that's not the case, but it pays to be prepared in case that does occur.
But I think what you're speaking about, Bryan, is something that for me takes the concept of resiliency, which we identified in conjunction with the Lake Christine fire and the impact and the threat to our ability to provide reliable power, and extends that to other threats, which quite honestly we really didn't consider to that level just a year or so ago, just a few months ago, to be quite honest. And that is, what's the impact of any sort of interruption? And now we're seeing an economic interruption. And so the ability of our utility to be responsive and flexible and prepared goes beyond the finance to the physical.
Yeah, one of the things that I love most about the cooperative model is that you do have an elected board of members, just like yourselves, that are experiencing the very same things that you're experiencing. And they're the ones that exercise the oversight. They're the ones that constantly are asking and testing, not in a way that's negative, but in a way that's positive and that's helpful, that helps us see things that we might miss or take steps that we might not be thinking about. And it's a really great model to make sure that whatever you're concerned about comes directly in to the operation of your cooperative, because we have to balance this need for reliability, for safety, for affordability, and sustainability. And sometimes that requires some very hard trade-offs to be made, informed by the values of the people that we serve. And there's no better way to get those values injected directly into the decision-making than through talking to your board of directors about what's important to you.
I'd like to speak for the entire board of directors to invite your ongoing input. It's more than just a Q&A session and annual meeting. It's something that we look for all the time. It's whether we're out in the grocery store or with friends or reading the local news. We invite your involvement. This is a cooperative that you own. And so your engagement, your involvement, asking the questions, participating, hearing and listening and giving feedback to us, this is what we thrive on, and this is what's going to lead to our success in the decades to come.
Great. Thank you, Dave. And thank you to you, our members, for sticking with us through this annual meeting, unlike any other, and for providing us with your questions and your answers. We'll continue to take those Q&A online at our website, holycross.com/annual meeting. Go ahead and submit your questions for us there, and we'll be sure to answer them in upcoming versions of our e-newsletter, which if you haven't already signed up for that, please do so. It's a great way to stay abreast of what's going on here at Holycross, your community, your cooperative, and your choices. Before we wrap up, I just want to remind you, immediately following, we'll be announcing our election results for our 2 contested elections for our board of directors, one in the Western District, one in the Northern District. So stay tuned. That'll be immediately following our wrap up here. Before we get to that point, Dave, any final thoughts for our members?
Well, Bryan, thank you. And, thank you to our members for participating not only right now in this unusual circumstance and this virtual meeting, but for all you're doing to keep your families and your communities safe and vibrant, right? We've all had to step in, whether it's here at Holycross and the staff's risen to the occasion, but each of us as individuals and family members and members of our own communities. So thank you for that. And, as Bryan said, and as we've been discussing quite a bit, this is your co-op. You own this co-op, and we thrive and continue to thrive based on your support, on your guidance, and on understanding what's important to you. Thank you again to Bryan and his staff for all you do every day, and particularly in the face of these challenges.
It is indeed a great pleasure to serve this wonderful community, to serve you, our members, to provide such an important service for our health, our welfare, and our well-being. It's a great privilege to work with a talented board of directors. And on behalf of all of us here at Holycross, thank you again for being a member, for joining us today at this annual meeting. Stay tuned. Election results coming immediately. And most of all, have a great night. Stay safe. Stay healthy, wash those hands, and thanks again for being with us.